Okay, I hope my microphone is working. Yes, good. Hello everyone, I'm Andri. I'm a software engineer at Nevercode and Codemagic as well. We came from Estonia, which is quite far away, if you know, and I'm a little bit nervous as well. So if you will hear something Viking-like speaking of me, then it's most likely I'm speaking Estonian. So don't worry and don't be afraid. Okay. So about the Codemagic. Codemagic indeed is a dedicated CI/CD tool for Flutter. It was launched on 4th of December with a Flutter 1.0, and I will tell you what this Codemagic is about, how to use it, what features it allows you to use, and what is on our roadmap. So in Nevercode, we believe that developers should release their application seamlessly along the development process, and they should concentrate on creating awesome and perfect apps instead of hassling around with the deployment, building applications, and etc. Are here people who are not aware of continuous integration or continuous delivery systems? Everyone knows what CI/CD is. Great. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on that. Is anyone using CI/CD in their real production project? Most of you, great. Have anyone published to Google Play or App Store via CI/CD service? Great, a little bit fewer. Great. So Codemagic was born from Nevercode, and Nevercode allows you to build native iOS, Android apps, Cordova, Ionic, React Native, and Flutter as well. However, at the moment, we recommend Nevercode users to join Codemagic for building Flutter applications. Speak a little bit about continuous integration delivery. So as most of you know, the continuous integration is a process of integrating your code changes frequently into your application instead of committing large changes infrequently. And continuous delivery is mostly about deploying your application to a production server, be it any Docker container, App Store, Play Market, etc. You name it. Codemagic. Codemagic on its own is a dedicated CI/CD tool and for Flutter, and I will show you how to use it, how easy it is to use, set up, and why is it great. So here you can see this is the landing of Codemagic, and you can authenticate with your 3 different accounts, be it a GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab. So for this demo purposes, I'm going to use a GitHub. And with one simple click, you are logged in. We automatically pick up all your repositories so that all of them are here. And we have a pagination as well, because we had one client with around 1,000 repositories in GitHub. So he forced us to do a pagination. And since GitHub provides a language specification for your repository, we understand which repository is most likely to be a Flutter project because the main language of it is Dart. And those applications that are not Dart, they are not marked with a small f near the repository name. So here you can see there are different filters. I will make a picture a little bit bigger, so that here are all of your different accounts that you are logged in. For example, if you have your own GitHub account, it will be here. If you have your own Bitbucket account, it will be here. If your Bitbucket account is hooked to your company Bitbucket account, so that you are part of a team, it also will be visible here. Like you can see Nevercode HQ, for example. This is our organization at GitHub, and Greenhouse CI is our organization at Bitbucket. This is a new filter because recently we released the team support, so now you can collaborate with your other developers so that they can see build statuses, build logs, change settings, the new workflows, configure your application, whatever they would like to. Here's the languages filter so that you can see all of your applications by selecting all languages that are not even Dart based applications. And here I want to remark that if you are going to be logged in with Bitbucket or GitLab, then you may not expect to see your repository marked with F, because Bitbucket and GitLab are not supporting that. You need to mark the language specification manually. And on the right side, we have a filter for our apps, so that we can show not the built ones, only built ones, and removed from repository. And of course, search by app name, so that if you have many repositories, like do it with 1,000 repos, so that it's easier for you to find your app. Okay, so that's about it. For this presentation purposes, we have created a mobile application, of course, on Flutter. It's just a small demo app that basically a little bit changed and modified Hello World application, so that all of Android users can open their Play Market and download this Not Last Meet app application. Because at the end of this demo, you will probably see some changes in this application. This application is actually also open source, so that under Nevercode HQ GitHub account, you can find Not Last Meetup repository that contains the source code for this app. And also, this application uses flavors, so that to run Android version of this app, you need to specify the flavor first. And here is the link for Google Play as well. So, without hesitating no more, let's kick off the first build of our Not Last Meetup application. Here you can select the workflow. By default, you have a default workflow that contains basic settings and a master. We are going to select a master branch. And this is as easy as it is to kick off a new build and expect this to work. Some technical difficulties. We are going to be a hardcore developers from here. And we are going to add this new application from scratch. Here, good. While it is building, let's go over to our user settings. So here, for example, you can check the theme of your web page. It can be either a dark one, which is probably going to be preferred by most of the developers, and it also can be a light one. Don't know why, but I'm personally enjoying the light version of the Codemagic, but it's up to you. Also, what is a very nice thing about it, that all of your user settings, all of your customized things are not saved in the cookies. They are rather stored in our database, so that you will have the same UI across the board. Is that you're using the web application or you open it on your phone. Also, we have an integrations part where you can connect all of your Bitbucket, GitHub accounts, and also GitLab, and we have a Slack integration as well. This allows you to build your application, and after that receive notification in Slack for you to be notified if there are any binaries built by your hook, or whether the build failed, for example. And we also have a notification for the build started one. But since the application is still building, let's check the app settings so far. In app settings, you can see this picture. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And let's open a build triggering first. What it allows you to set up. For example, by default, when you add your new application, we add webhooks to your repository if it's possible. If you, for example, your account has enough permissions to write webhooks to your repository, and they are added. But if you want your application to be built automatically, you need to trigger builds on every push. And also, you can set up branch patterns here. And branch patterns are a very powerful tool because, for example, you can have many workflows. One workflow can be for only master builds that will also be published to production. And you can have one workflow for development feature branches. And with that, for example, imagine that we have this workflow for master builds and we don't want to build any of the pull request open branches, whatever, only master. For that, we are going to add a star. Or for example, if in your company, it's a common practice that you have all of your feature branches with prefix like feature. And let's say it can be either slash or hyphen and something after that. You can match all of these branches with asterisk. And since we don't want to build those branches, we are going to exclude those. And you can see that first watch pattern is added. But with that, you can expect that since you are excluded all of those branches, your master branch is going to be picked up. It's not actually like that. So you can double check it by clicking here, and you can see that no branches match set pattern. What you can do, you should add a master explicitly and include it. And now you will see that the master branch is matched. This is made so that you can double check and be sure that, for example, if you have a feature convention, then if some of your developers will create a dev branch, for example, then it also will not be published. So let's save this. Environment variables. Also a new feature that came to Codemagic recently. You probably know what the environment variables are, how to use those, and how they can be used in your Flutter application. But for those who know not, it's very easy. For example, you have some kind of API key, and you want to store it here, and do not store it in any kind of settings file or .env file or whatever. You can type this API key here. And if you are collaborating with many other developers, for example, on your open source project, and you also don't want other people see this API key, then you can make this secure. And you see that it is hidden. So don't forget to save it, and that's it. So this is about setting up the, let's say so, environment of your build. These three stages is basically the build on its own. The first one is kind of hidden here. It's a cloning of your repository. What we are doing, we are fetching your Git repo with depth of 1 so that we can build it, so that we have a source code to build. The first step after cloning is testing. You can have a post-clone script and pre-test script. For example, if you need to do any custom configuration, you need to copy .env file for production to rename it, and you know what you need to do in that case. You can do it here. For example, in pre-test script, you need to add some additional testing configuration for your application. You can do it here. In test tab, you can set up all of your tests. Here at the moment, we have Flutter test only that can be executed with Flutter test command, and you can also pass some additional arguments like, for example, test main test.dart, so that you can have additional functionality to it, customization. And also you can stop the build if your tests fail. We also support Flutter driver test. We can run them on iOS simulator for the performances to be much more better rather than Android simulator. But in case, for example, you have set up your workflow to build only Android application, then we will not waste time on building iOS version of your application to test it. Rather, we will boot up Android simulator and test your Android app. Again, another round of post and pre scripts and the build part. Here, what is interesting about it is that you can also set up the environment of your build, but in a more concrete way. So for example, you can specify exact Flutter version here, whether that be any channel of stable, master, beta, or dev, or exact version. For example, I want to build with this tag. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to use channel stable. Also, you can choose the mode of your build so that you can build a debug version, release, or profile. We are going to go with release one. Build for platforms. For this time, I want to build only for Android because we don't have any iOS publishing set it up, so that we don't need to use that. Why also you would like to use that is that, for example, you have one commit And you can build your application in parallel in 2 workflows so that you have separate environment for 2 builds. Also can be very important at some point. What do we set up here? If you are going to use an iOS, build an iOS, then you can also set up the Xcode version. We support anything starting from 9.0.1 and the newer. If you want to be always up to date with latest Xcode version, you can have the latest tag that is chosen by default. Currently it corresponds to 10.1. Also, there is a beta version of Xcode that is currently 10.2, so that if you want your application to be stable-proof in the future, then you can use Edge version and go ahead with that. But if you always want your application to be built with exact version of Xcode, then you can also set up and use, for example, 9, if you ever want to. Speaking about Flutter versions, then we support everything up to down to 0.5, so that if you are building very old application or you want to build a very old application, you can also do that. So we are going with Android and additional build arguments. Interesting part, for example, in our use case, we need to build exact flavor. For that, I can just type in here flavor and flavor 2, and let's save it. For those who don't know what flavors are, for example, if you open our GitHub page, in build.gradle, you can find this part, where we are defining our product flavors, and flavor 1 is building basically the same things as flavor 2, other that flavor 1 is using the kind of default icon for this application, and if you're going to build a flavor 2, then you are going to use alternative icon. This is about flavors. So let's say that.
Sorry, is there an equivalent to flavors for iOS?
Yes, there is.
And you support that too?
We support that as long as you set up everything on your application. Then the only thing that you need to do is to add an additional build argument here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's about it. Let me double check that flavor should be written like that. Yes, good. And again, another round of posted build scripts and publishing. Well, the publishing is basically like a keyword feature of Nevercode and Codemagic. Here, you can set up code signing for your Android and iOS devices, and also publishing to email, Slack, Google Play, and App Store Connect. With custom scripts, for example, you need to do some custom publishing to whatever service you want to. You can use a custom script for that to push any of the binary files that are located on a machine currently at the time of the build, and distribute them whatever the way you want to. So let's check the Android code signing first. What you need to do first, you actually need to configure your application. This is a very common question, actually. For example, in our Codemagic Slack workspace, where people are asking for help, one of basically the most popular question is code signing for iOS and for Android. How to set up code signing for Android for your Flutter project? For that, there is a very cool documentation part in Flutter docs, built and release for Android. We are not going to go over these topics like reviewing your app manifest and build configuration. We'll rather go down to signing the application and creating the App Store. Here they give you a command, which is a good enough command to generate a JKS file for application to be signed. Make sure that if you are copying this, then you can also change the alias name, not to key, but something that you want it to be. And what goes after that is also very important if you would like to use Codemagic tool to sign your application, because here it says that create a file named key.properties in your Android folder. And they are giving these variable names. They are important because once you are upload your key store file here and type your passwords, we are going, before building your Android application, we are going to create the same key.properties file and populate it with the values of these variables. And corresponding to the values that you have given us, like the password and also path to your key store file. So make sure that you follow this naming convention. Here, for example, it also shows how to set up, how to exactly use code signing in your Android application, because you need to set up this in your build.gradle file. And here, again, it also fetches these named parameters from key.properties file. As Simon before also told me that there is another cool nifty feature in build.gradle file. You can check the environment variables, and in Nevercode, in Codemagic actually, we export environment variables called FCI underscore key underscore password, key alias, key store password, and key store path, so that you can match those in your build.gradle file. And there, for example, you can match that CI environment variable is present and equal to true. And after that, match these environment variables to set up the code signing for release. Any questions here so far? Because it may be complicated for many of that. Good. So let's upload our key store file. I'm going to grab it from here, and I'm going to hope that I will type the password correctly. And I already done. The alias name was key because I was not very putting any attention for that. And again, and voila, it's saved. All the passwords are encrypted and saved securely. iOS code signing. Now, this is actually very interesting because here we have something very great, which is automated code signing for iOS devices. It basically means that if you are a Flutter developer, but at the moment you don't have a MacBook, and you still can publish your Flutter applications for iOS to App Store by using this feature. Only thing you need to do is become a part of Apple developer program. And what you need to do is that type your Apple ID here, your password, choose the provisioning profile type, whether that be a development, ad hoc, or App Store, and specify the bundle identifier if you need to. And this will allow us to fetch provisioning profiles and code signing certificates automatically on a build machine during the runtime. And this is a great nifty feature that can become handy to many people out there without Macs. For those who want to be kind of old school, we also support manual code signing so that you can generate your code signing certificate manually and provisioning profile as well, and be as easy as upload them here like we did with the key store file. That's about the iOS code signing. Email and Slack publishing, you can add a recipient, and it will send a notification to email whether the app is built successfully, whether testing failed or the app build failed. Slack, again, the same way. You can check. You can connect to your Slack workspace. Then after that, check your channel name from here, and also specify whether you want to be notified when the build starts, when the build fails, if you want to publish artifacts to this Slack channel, and if you want to publish even if test fails. And the most sweet part is publishing to Apple Store or Play Market. In the purposes of this demo, we are going to be publishing only to Play Market. What you need to do for that? You will need a credentials file that you can receive from Google Play Console. And I will show you how to do that. For that, let's go over to Nevercode documentation, because why not? Here, if you scroll a little bit down, here is a very nice description of what you need to do. And you need to go to your Google Play Console. So let's open that. Here, where the main page, you click on Settings, API Access, and here you should be able to download the API JSON file. Since I'm not the owner of our team, I cannot do so, but thankful to our owner, I have this key so that I don't need to do this. But most likely, if you are the owner, you will see this kind of page, so that it's basically the same still, so that nothing changed from that. So let's go over here, paste our API JSON file, and we are going to publish this application to production, but you can also check another track like internal, alpha, beta, or again production. And still, you can check whether you want to build, whether you want to publish, even if your test fails. About App Store Connect. If you want to publish to App Store Connect, then you again need to specify your Apple ID, password, and app ID. And to do so, we need to before set up the iOS code signing part. This. And this is basically all about preparing your application for build with straightforward to production. Another very interesting topic everyone is asking about is versioning. And how can I version my application? What should I do for that? And there is actually one cool script that I'm going to quickly recopy. And I will explain it in a second. So we want to do this in our pre-built script. So let's open this tab, paste it here, and see what we have here. Of course, you need to specify the environment for your script to run. Here we are using Bash, but for example, if you want to run any kind of Python script, you don't need to create a Python file in your repository, and after that, code is here. You can type your the Python code here, and just specify the environment as Python. And it can be used with many other scripting languages. And another cool feature that we have is that all of your builds are running on dedicated Mac Minis in the United States. So that we have a full-blown macOS there with many other languages pre-installed. But if you are lacking something, for example, some Cocoa Pods repository that you need to additionally fetch, or any kind of third-party plugin that requires for generating your Dart code, because I know that there are some kinds of code generators for Dart. You can do this here. For example, before building, you just generate the needed things, and they are there. So, speaking about that, what we have here, we have a version code, and we have a version name. Everyone most likely knows what version name is, but what version code is. It's actually an identity specifier for application. And if I'm going to open the release statistics for our Not Less Meetup application app releases, then you can see that we have basically the version name of 1.1.1, full rollout, and the version code is 19. And for example, if you already have published your application many times to Play Market, and you came to use the Codemagic, and you want to set up the pipeline to publish all of your builds, master builds to production with Codemagic, but you already have like a version code of 19. What can you do? You can specify the version code here, for example, 19 again, and use our Codemagic build number environment variable as a justifier for your version code, so that version code would increase with every build commit and every build. This allows you to not worry about versioning in the sense that once it's set up, it's working, it's running. If at some point you will run into a situation that you need to, for example, run back in time with your version code, you can either change it here, or you can contact us, for example, in our Codemagic Slack workspace, and we can throw it back to you. So, for example, we have, let's do a quick math. Let's check our last build. It most likely failed, yes, because we didn't specify any flavors for this application. And you can see that you must specify a flavor option. we have a build index of 1. Since we have published already application with version code of 19, easy math, we should have a 20, we'll have 2, then I should specify the version code as 18. Great. What we do next? After that, we're exporting the environment variable of new version code, which consists of version code that we specified here above with plus the build number. So it'll be 18 plus 2, since the next build is going to be with index 2. And the version name is going to be version name dot new version code. And what we are doing after that, since we are building the Android version of your application, we need to export this value somewhere so that they are visible for Gradle. And for example, Gradle is looking for them in local.properties file. Most of you are not committing this file to repository. And even if you do, Codemagic will basically override it with the default value of path to Flutter SDK in order to Flutter to work at all. And with this custom script, for example, you can also populate the values of this file with something that you need. And I know that I need to specify flutter.version name and equal to new version name. And I'm piping this to local.properties. And also doing the same thing with version code. So let's save this. And let's build it. Any questions so far? It's going very smoothly, cool. Also, our new feature that was released like on Friday, build status badges, so that you can let everyone know if your open source application is building on GitHub. You can copy a batch URL or a markdown. So, how to kick off a new build? Right from app settings, we are going to select master branch. Let's double check first that we are building the flavor 2. Yes, we do. Release, Android. We have our Android code signing here. We also do have the Google Play publishing to production and our versioning custom script. So let's kick off a new build. Great. So while we are waiting, I think that we can start Q&A now. And if you have any questions, then I'm fully open for that.
I did actually notice that the publish artifacts to Slack doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work?
Nope. So that might be one for you to fix.
Right.
When are you going to be supporting app bundles? Because at the moment, the config only lets you choose the Android config. Doesn't let you choose between the two.
Yeah.
Doesn't
this will become soon. I think that in a few weeks.
And for anyone, if you get a warning saying there's no APK found from the Android builds, you've set up your code signing wrong.
So it's not our problem.
Found that one out.
Thank you.
What's in your git ignore? And can you show what you push to Bitbucket or whatever GitHub?
Of course. It's basically auto-generated with Flutter project. So all the default things here. And what I have added on my own is that I'm ignoring code signing credentials for Android. These JKS files in the root. So that's it. Just my recommendation so that you don't publish to all of your code signing credentials to open source repository.
And the environmental variables, where do you exactly set them in Codemagic?
So we are exporting a pack of our own environment variables for you to use. How can you see them? For example, you can, in custom script, you can run printenv bash command to see the whole environment variables. Most of them are just like CI equal to true, the build number equal to the build index. We have some IDs like build ID, that is like a big hash. We have a commit hash environment as well, so that you can use all of those environment variables in your build.gradle files for some customizing tools. How do we export them? When we are preparing the build machine, actually in this step here, what is this doing? This basically boots up a VM, a fresh VM with Xcode, with Flutter, everything that we needed installed, pre-installed on it. Then it exports the environment variables that are setting up, and etc. And after that as well, checks out the Flutter version, so that if you have, for example, a Flutter channel setting up, then it checks for updates. So I hope that answered your question.
Hi.
Yeah.
Do you support the deployment on test labs?
Test labs. So far, no. But we do support the code signing. So for example, you can use ad hoc to distribute to non-test flight testers, but here, if you use the App Store code signing, then you can distribute to test flight. So far, you can do this probably with custom script, or if I think that this part also works for that. Need to double check.
Hi.
Hi.
Can the configuration stay in the version control by any chance?
Excuse me?
Can the configuration stay in the version control similar to other CI tools?
So you are most likely speaking about the configuration files.
Yes.
Infrastructure as code is incoming. That is in progress currently, so that will allow you to basically set up, again, we want to continue with the vision that building Flutter applications is easy as just creating a new app, changing something, and you have your MVP. We want to be as easy to also build your application so that you log in and you start the first build. But once you need some kind of extra customization on top of that, we will allow you to include a configuration file where you can set up everything that you are interested in. For example, you want to reorder the build step. And you can do that in a custom configuration file, and everything else you can set up, for example, in UI if that's more convenient for you. So that's incoming.
And are you going to have any plans to support maybe Fastlane? Because I can see that you don't have all the normal distributions such as Hockey App, Beta by Crashlytics, and Fastlane kind of does that. Are you planning to have that as part of your pipeline as well?
Yeah, we can do that. It's not exactly on our roadmap for like future releases. I mean, I'm speaking about like 1 month or 2 in the future, but we can do this. It's not a problem. We have a Fastlane support on Nevercode.
Thank you.
While there is no question yet, I want to say that those of you who has downloaded the application, let's check our dashboard, and I hope that we will see the new version code. Yeah, version code 20 here, and what you should see that your application icon is changed from this to this. So your question, excuse me.
Yeah, thanks. So 2 questions. One, do you support monorepos? And the second question is, how do you work with pricing? It looks like you do 3 tiers mostly for the time being. How does it work with, I guess, like future plans, or like how does the pricing work?
Want to clarify, what is a monorepo in your context?
Well, if you have multiple projects, I guess, like not just Flutter, maybe like some other project. Okay. How can you configure that you only build on the particular path changes? Is that supported?
To locate the Flutter project, we are looking for pubspec.yaml file, and once we found it, we set this the path to this file as a root of your project. And if you have many pubspec YAML files in your repository, then on settings page under building, you will see the drop-down with paths to your different pubspec file YAMLs, so that you can choose whether you want to build which one. And the second question was about pricing, yeah? So currently the Codemagic is free for everyone, and we will have pricing income in the future. And if you are, for example, if you are a big company and you are interested to have Mac Pro, some customization level on top of this, something custom for you, then contact us and we can provide this for you with no problems. And there is also going to be a free plan for Flutter developers on Codemagic.
Do you have an example of how you do the versioning script for iOS?
Currently, I do not have that, but it should be as easy. So there are many suggestions in our Codemagic Slack workspace. If you are interested, you can all join this. There are very interesting questions. And some of people I saw that they are basically doing the same thing I'm doing here with local.properties files, but they are just pushing these changes to info.playlist. So basically, that's it. As easy.
And you mentioned you can run it both on iOS and Android with the driver, but you have to have 2 different builds. Was that it?
So we are looking for, by default, we want to build iOS because of the performance. Simulator is working much more better on macOS than emulator. And if you don't have iOS folder in your project, for example, or if you are not building iOS in this workflow, but you have driver tests set up, then we will fall back to emulator.
Okay, so if you really want to run on both, you could potentially run it as 2 different builds?
You can do this as 2 different builds with 2 different workflows.
Then finally, on mentioned Fastlane, do you have any way, like, do you generate screenshots or such as the output artifact that you could push?
Actually, speaking about this, you can generate screenshots on your own. For example, if you are having something custom on top of this, so that you have screenshots after testing. You can export this to export dir environment. We have an environment variable of export dir, and if there is something, we will pack this to zip archive and publish to our storage as well, so that it can be downloaded as well as your binaries. So you can gather everything you need.
All right, any more questions? Just one more question because we have to close up now.
So the version script we have here. So if you bump the version in the script, is there any way to commit that version bump back to GitHub or source control?
Yes. Basically, if your repository is open source, then you can do just git push from the repo folder of your repository. If your repository is private, then you can basically, I saw that people are having workarounds with HTTP and SSH as well. So in case, for example, at the moment you can save the content of your SSH key as an environment variable. In custom script, you write this to a file and then use it as a SSH key to push to your Git repository. As easy as it should be.
All right, thank you very much. Andrei, have you finished?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So any further questions, we are going to be going down to the pub, the usual place, so we can ask all the questions we want there. But unfortunately, we've come to our end here tonight. So I would like you to give Andrei a round of applause. And thank you.